All right, so let's continue with this here. We got, so what I did last time was this one here. Make a track, make an aux track, name the track, whatever you want to name it. Select the tracks you want to send to the aux, select them, hold Option Shift, click on the output, or send, or something like that. Anything you want to send to it. Just remember, in order for it to work, if you've already made a track, the aux track cannot have an input assigned. It must say no input. That's this part right here. If I make a new aux track, it's got to say no input. Like, whoops, wait, hold on a second. Y'all can't see. It's got to say no input, like this right there. It's got to say no input. So make sure it says no input there. If you have not made an aux track yet, here's another way you can do this, which is still pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and delete this aux track here. If I want to take all these drums, I'm going to go ahead and subgroup these drums. I'm going to send all these drums, all these tracks here to a new aux track. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the one on the left and hold down my Shift key and click them all so they're all selected. And I'm going to go to the output and hold down Option and Shift, click on one of them and go to New Track right here. Now what this is going to do is it's going to create a new track. Make sure this is selected, make sure it looks like this. And it's going to create a new track and it's going to send all the tracks to that track. Boom. So now you can see the outputs of all the tracks goes to my drum group. And that's this one here. I'm going to go ahead and rename this one here, main out 1, 2, like that. There we go. Or actually, you know what? I'll just rename it out 1 and 2. It doesn't need to say main. There we go, cool. So I've got all these things set up. Make sure I solo safe. If we hit play, you hear how like that distortion is just, you can barely hear it in there. And I've been away from this so long. I had to mute it and unmute it to hear what it sounds like, but I definitely like it better with that distortion in there. Let's listen to it without the distortion. Sounds fine, it sounds like drums. Now here's with the distortion. It just gives a little bit of liveliness to that kind of mid register in there. It just feels like something's inside there filling in the gaps, which is what I like. All right, so now I've got everything subgrouped into this drum group here. I'm gonna go ahead and color these tracks like I like to for my drums, just to make them the right drum color, right color for me. I'm gonna go here to my window that says colors and get my tracks, and I'm gonna make them all this kind of orangey color. And then all these here are gonna be a light orange color. And my drum group is gonna be the same orange color as everything else. That way I know what I'm looking at. And I always make my tracks basically the same colors. Orange for the drums, red for the bass, guitars, vocals are green, and then everything else just kind of ends up being whatever it is. All right, so all right, so that's that. And that brings us up to this, plugins. Okay, a little history of plugins real quick. There were plugins at one point in time called Audio Suite plugins. These were the first plugins that came with Pro Tools, and actually we still use Audio Suite plugins. These are non-real-time plugins, so I can assign an Audio Suite plugin to a clip, but not to a track, and you can't listen to it at the same time you listen to everything else. And then those were the very first ones in the early 90s, is when Audio Suite plugins were a thing, like late 80s, early 90s. And then DigiDesign, the company at the time that made Pro Tools, made RTAS plugins. RTAS stands for, down here, Real-Time Audio Suite. These were Audio Suite plugins, but they happened in real time. But they only happened in real time. they couldn't work faster than real time. And that was a real big problem for Pro Tools for a long time. Then what we have now is we have AAX plugins. AAX plugins stands for Avid Audio Extension. And these can work in real time or offline faster than real time. They do both. So these are like a combination of the Audio Suite and the RTAS plugins. So they're like the new ones. And so what this is great is it means that your Pro Tools can now do things faster than real time. So you can actually bounce offline and stuff, which is something that it only started doing in like, I don't know, 2010 or something like that. It's really recent. So AAX DSP works with Pro Tools Ultimate, and AAX Native works on your computer systems. Pro Tools Ultimate are like basically the same as your old HD systems. They can work with regular computer, or they can work with your HD systems. They can work with both. So it's actually pretty cool, and you can get both, but it's a lot more expensive. I think the Pro Tools Native is like $20, $29 a month for normal people. For students, it's like half price or something, or it's really cheap. But the DSP ones are quite expensive, like $75 a month or something like that. It's a bit more expensive. One thing when you're working with plugins is you have to think about track compatibility. Mono can be mono or mono to stereo, and stereo can be stereo only. So for example, if I have plugins that are only stereo, I cannot put them on mono tracks. And remember, like for example, this one is a mono track, this one is a stereo track. See, mono 1 pan pot, stereo 2 pan pots. So I can't use mono plugins on a stereo track, and I cannot use stereo plugins on a mono track. They have to be compatible there, and that's like a thing that's like a Pro Tools thing. And here's a little bit more about that. Mono, for example, if I have a delay that's mono, it's going to continue to be mono. So here, let me go ahead and go to my snare track. Let's solo this out. I'm going to go ahead and turn off all these effects over here. There we go. There's my snare drum, completely dry. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a delay on here. Go to Plugins, Delay. And I'm going to use the delay that comes with Pro Tools, Mod Delay 3. And see here, you've got two versions of it. You've got mono and mono/stereo. And what that means is the mono one is just going to be mono. So if I put it on there and we look at my track down here in the bottom, see, it's still mono. Still a mono track. If we listen to it, it sounds like a delay. We'll do this, and we'll make it dry wet to 50%-ish. Okay, so we got that. It's got a low pass filter on it like that. That's mono. It's right in the middle of your headphones. It's not going to go left and right. That's mono, and that's all it can do. It can just be mono. Now, if I go and I change that to mono/stereo, this one here, mono stereo, now right now it's like a mono sound, but I can make it be stereo. And that can be stereo. Now, what's happened is our track has also become stereo. See, these are mono and this is stereo. But if we look over here at our edit window, the snare drum is still a mono file, but the track has become stereo. And the track has become stereo at the point of that plugin. So here's what this looks like. Over here, I've got a track that's mono, and if I have plugins before this delay, these are going to be mono, and anything after the delay is going to be stereo. So everything before the delay is mono. If we go back and look over here, so see how my delay is in my third space here? These slots here are going to be mono, and these slots here are going to be stereo. Watch this. If I click on it, it goes to plugin, and it doesn't say anything about stereo or anything. It's just mono, 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 stereo, mono, mono, like that. But if I go over here, look at this. It says multi-channel and multi-mono. These are for stereo tracks. Any kind of stereo track, any kind of stereo plugin can be multi-mono or multi-channel. Multi-channel just means stereo. Multi-mono means it's got two mono plugins on the left and the right sides. So everything before this plugin is mono, everything after it is stereo. Oops. Okay. So we're still continuing the same way. Stereo tracks can have multi-channel plugins or multi-mono plugins. Multi-channel plugins are true stereo. They have one set of controls that change everything left and right. Multi-mono are left and right, they're separated, and we can link them or unlink them. Linked means it's just basically like the same as a multi-channel plugin, it's just the left and the right are the same. Unlinked means I can do stuff with my left and my right separately. There we go. Okay. So stereo, Yep. So here, let's just look at that real quick before we go to the next part. I'm going to take this off here. So here, and here, let's go to my EQ. Let's see my EQ. EQ 7 band right here. Boom. Pull this up. And if here, we can adjust it. Let's adjust that like that. Now, this is a, hold on, let's put a stereo thing before. Hold on one second, let me just change that real quick. We're going to change this into stereo, mono stereo. So we'll go to enhanced EQ. Okay, so I'm not going to change anything, so you're not going to really hear the difference too much, but it is going to change it so we got mono and stereo here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the EQ 7 before it, mono, and after it, multi-mono. Okay, and let's look at these. This one on the left is before, this one on the right is after. Now, they don't look different. If I do this one here, I'm going to go ahead and just turn this gain up on this one. Bypass. I'm going to turn the gain up on this one, same amount. Basically, it sounds the same. It sounds, I mean, I can't hear the difference. So what the difference in these plugins, though, is right here in this space. See these little controls right here? This is for the left and the right. So if I turn off this link button here, master link, turn it off, and now I can select the left and the right. So my right side, my left side here, if I go to the right side, I go and I pull this down like this. So now if we listen to it, now we're going to get some phasing. It sounds weird. It makes my ear sound weird. And we look at the left. Let's turn you on. There we go. You hear I'm pushing it, and it's like more on the left-hand side. It's kind of makes my ear feel weird. Okay. So that's what we can do to that. Now I can go ahead and put these here. Let me just go ahead and switch back to my right side and move it forward a little bit on my frequencies. Let's push the right side. Let's go back to my left side. See how I'm pushing different things. Right? You can do all sorts of weird stuff with the stereo feel of it because it's separating the left and the right. And let's see, DJ Blood Money says, does the track only split to mono after you use a mono effect? It splits to mono after you use a mono, it splits to stereo after you use a mono stereo effect. It's got to be mono/stereo for it to make the split. If it's just mono, it's just going to be mono. If it's stereo, it can be multi-channel or multi-mono. And that's in the notes right here. Stereo tracks can be multi-channel or multi-mono. Now, if I've been messing around with my multi-mono plugin and I've been messing with the left and the right separately, if I want to link them back together, if I click this button, it pulls up a little thing here that says, you are about to relink a multi-mono plugin. When you relink, all controls in common from each channel are updated to have identical settings and will share a single automation playlist. Choose which channels control values and automation playlists are to be retained below. Note the control values and automation playlists are for all other channels will be lost. So anything for left and right on this one here is going to be lost here. So we're just going to say, let's choose the left side, whatever, and hit OK. And now everything is left. Everything looks like the left side. Okay. So once you make it, if you want to put it back to mono or stereo, rather multi-channel, you can't. You're gonna lose that whatever you did differently. Okay. So there's that there. Otherwise, they're exactly the same. Can you explain the difference between multi-mono and stereo? There's not one. Not really. I mean, the only difference is multi-mono allows you to adjust the left and the right side separately. Stereo doesn't. Stereo is just stereo. And that's what Pro Tools calls multi-channel stereo. That's true stereo. They should be, I mean, for all intents and purposes, they're the same. Stereo and multi-channel is like the same. And multi-mono is also the same, but it's just your left and your right have separate things. So for like, if you're doing a reverb, you don't really want the reverb to be multi-mono, you want it to be multi-channel. But if you're doing EQ and you think at some point you wanted to do something different from your left and your right sides, then make it multi-mono. But like 95% of the time I use multi-channel. There are a couple of multi-mono plugins that you have to use multi-mono just because they don't make them stereo. But I'm going to tell you about those in a second. Damien says, what would happen if you did that on the other side? You mean if I put it back to the other side, if I did it to the right-hand side? It would just look like the right side. It's just whatever one you want to keep is the one you chain it to. So if I did it to the left-hand side, it's gonna make the right look like the left. If I do it to the right-hand side, it's gonna make the left look like the right. That's all it does. And what I recommend you do, if you still have questions about it, my recommendation is try it yourself. Like try it. The best way to learn about this stuff is to try it out. If you're curious about what happens if I do this, what happens if I do that, try it. That's what you need to do is try it out. Okay, so the empty one. You mean this one on the left? No, the right, the other empty one. I don't know what you're saying. The left one here? Oh, well, you can't do it on the left because there's only one. It's just mono. You can't. There's nothing you can. So this is the left side, right? It is the left, yeah. And also, there's nothing you can do. Like you can't do the same things because this one, the whole reason I can unlink them and do stuff to it is because I have that control right there. So I can make these different. But I can't do that with this one because I don't have that capability, and that's kind of my point, is that this one doesn't have that. So you can't do it. It's impossible. All right. Okay, so a couple of plugins that are multi-channel, multi-mono only. The only one that's really important for multi-mono for stereo tracks is your trim plugin. And the trim plugin is what I use when we're going to talk about automation, like I think tomorrow. But the trim plugin is under other. Where is it? Wait, it's an Avid plugin. Oh, sorry, it's under multi-mono, other, trim, right there. And the trim plugin, what it does is it essentially, hold on, let me just get rid of this one here. Don't need those. What it does is it essentially, it's like a gain for the track. So I would put this into 12 dB mode, which is going to make it exactly like our faders here. And now, well, let me just go ahead and unsolo that. Turn all these back on. There we go. And now I can turn it down like this. If I put it at minus 18-ish, right? That's what that sounds like. And if I put this one at minus 18, sounds exactly the same. Right, so here's this, right? And then if I turn this, sounds exactly the same. The trim plugin is literally just a gain. It's just the same, again, it's just a meter. It's the same as this meter right here. The reason why I use the trim plugin is for automation, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But I don't like to do automation directly on my track here, on this fader here. I prefer to do all my automation on this fader right here. And I'm going to explain why tomorrow. But when we get to that automation, I think it's tomorrow. When we get to the automation, let's see, is it tomorrow? It is tomorrow. So when we get to that automation, I'm going to talk about the trim plugin. And remember, you can only use trim as multi-mono. If we go here and look at my plugins, multi-channel, I go to multi-channel, I go to other, trim is not in here. If I go to multi-mono, other, now here's trim. Now, what I also want you to notice though, multi-channel, other, and mine has Melodyne, because in Melodyne, Serum Effects, some other stuff here. Melodyne is like a pitch correction software. I have Melodyne, I also have Auto-Tune. But it's right here. But if I go to multi-mono, if you see, Melodyne is not there, and neither is the Serum Effects. So there's a few things missing. So that's kind of my point, is that if you are, if you're trying to do stuff to your track, and you're trying to add effect, and the effect you're looking for is not there, it's probably because you're on a stereo track and you're doing multi-channel or multi-mono incorrectly. So just be aware of that. That's kind of the thing there. All right. So now, let's continue here. It's not a big deal, and basically this is exactly what I just said. It's not a big deal, just be aware that if you don't see the plugin in your list, it may be multi-channel or multi-mono only, don't panic. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about the plugin controls, and I'm gonna go pretty quickly through this because they're not that exciting and we don't need to spend a lot of time on it. I wanna go ahead and point out a few cool plugins for you rather than spend time on the plugin controls. But basically, this is your top part of every plugin. If I look at this plugin from Lexicon and I look at this plugin, from Avid, so this one comes from UAD, this one comes from Avid, but if we look at the top part right here, they're exactly the same. So over here is our track section, over here is our preset section, over here is our automation section, and here's our bypass. And this just tells me if it's a native plugin or if it's a PC-powered plugin. You're only going to see native-powered plugins right now. So that's what these sections here are for. So let's just take a little bit of a look at the track section here. This part here is your track selector. It selects which track you're on. This part here selects the slot that you're in. The slots are like this: A, B, C, D, E, like this. These parts here. This is slot A, this is slot B, this is slot C, D, E. And you can see right here, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. You got 10 slots. And it shows you what plugin is in each one. So for example, if I go over here to this one here, and I click on it, it would show me there's Microshift in slot C and SansAmp in slot A, like that. All right. And again, you can see they're the same sections on all these different plugins. See, that section's the same on all of them, all the different plugins, okay? And then this one here shows me which plugin is there. I can actually change my plugin right here. So if I'm looking at this delay, I'm like, okay, cool, this is a delay. I want a different delay. So mod delay 3. So let's click on this, and it has a little dot next to wherever it is. And I can go in here and I can choose one of these different delays. Let's choose the H3000 delay. H3000 factory here. I can go in here and I can click on my, let's go to my delays, and I can say, let's do this. You know, whatever. Okay, so there's my delay. I don't want that delay. I want this other. I want my other delay back. Give me my other delay back. Cool. Oh, I didn't realize. I forgot that it's. Put some of this in here. Put some of this. There we go. There we go. Remember, it was like 17, right? Something like that, 16, 17. Yeah, cool. All right, so let's actually, it was like, I think it was 16 minutes. I think it was that. All right, so that's that part there. So I can change my track here. And this one, it's important to keep in mind, if I change my track, it's not gonna change my effect that's on my current track. It's just literally navigation, so I can see what a different track is. This is actually here for when you're using Pro Tools controllers and stuff like that. If you have, like, we have the icon desk at school, and if you're using the icon desk, this part here becomes handy. This here is just selecting different slots, and you can see some of these slots don't have anything in them, most of them. Right? This one is the only one that does. And then here, this one's the only one that actually changes the plugin that's on the slot. All right, so I got that there. Then we have the preset section. The preset section, the one that says presets changes the settings of the plugin. The one that says plus and minus moves through the presets one by one. The one that says list pulls up a list of all the presets. Compare flips back and forth. If I start changing settings, the compare button flips back and forth. And then my preset settings menu allows me to save, copy, paste, and import plugin settings. You can also set up a user default setting here, which I did before. User setting default, you must save your settings as a preset before you can set it as a user default. So for example, if I go back to my click track and I want to set up another one here, let's make that active. Let's listen to the click track. That's amazing. Love that click track there. Let's go ahead and solo it. Yeah, beautiful. So let's go ahead and make a different click track. So let's make one that says, let's use the spear. What does that sound like? Ooh, fancy. Spear. For sure I'm going to use that one, right? Okay, so we use that one there. I want to save that as a different setting. So what I do is I go here to my preset menu and I go save settings as, because I don't want to save over my previous one. And I'm going to give it a name, Tony Click 2. Boop. Now, I can, when I click on my presets here, it can go between Tony Click 1 and Tony Click 2. And I have a list of my different presets, which is not very many. Or I can flip back and forth using the plus and minus buttons here. And then if I wanted to set it as a user default, let's say I want to set this one here as a user default, I can click on this and say set as user default. And now whenever I pull up my click track, it's going to pull that setting up as a user default. The one thing about your user default is you can only set it if you've already saved the preset. You have to save the preset first, and then you can set it as a user default. There you go. I do not want this one as my user default. I want this one as my user default. There you go. Boop. Cool. Now, if we go through, like over here, there's going to be a lot more presets we can mess around with. So for example, if I click on this one here, it has my folder, and then it has my different presets in here. So I can click on my different folders, and I can go in here and I can say Indie Drum Room. Whoops, hold on a second. Let's turn you, done. Mute. Click on my list, and I can easily select different presets. Cool. And you can choose, and you can hear how it sounds. It changes the sound every time we change it right there. So that's pretty cool there. All right, so that's that section. That's pretty, there's nothing really fancy about it. It's just, there it is. And the automation section we're going to talk about when we talk about automation stuff. The only thing we're going to talk about with the automation here is, let me see here, yeah, I use presets as a template for an idea. Then I like to create my own presets. I feel like if I'm making an EP or comp, it keeps the sound consistent with the project. Yeah, so Andre, I totally agree. But I don't think, you don't necessarily need, like, if you find a preset that you like, then use that preset for everything. Like, you don't need to recreate the wheel every time. If you like a preset, then use that preset. But I do agree you should use presets across the board. You know, keep things like pretty across the board for the most part, but not 100%. Like, you know, really what's important is to keep the vibe going, and you might use a bunch of different effects for that. Like, you don't have to stick to one or two effects. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about the other day when we talked about, well, yesterday I guess it was, right? When we talked about sending stuff to reverbs and stuff like that. You want to have maybe a key overall reverb for things, but especially you're doing a lot in FL Studio, so I think you're probably doing what, like electronic-y kind of stuff. So, you know, you can use a lot of different sounds and things in electronic music, which I'm sure you're aware of. I'm kind of saying that for everybody's benefit. All right, so here in the plugin controls, here auto enable and dealing with automation stuff. And then, but we're not going to dive deep into automation yet. We're going to dive deep into automation tomorrow. But this here, just real quick on this, this allows me to auto enable stuff. So let's go over here to my Mod Delay 3, which is a Pro Tools plugin. It comes with Pro Tools. And in here, we can, if I click on this button here, it's going to pull up a list of everything that can be automated in plugins, and it's important in Pro Tools. And it's important to understand that Pro Tools doesn't automatically allow you to automate all your plugin stuff like Ableton Live does, or Logic, or FL Studio, I think. I don't know, I've never used FL Studio. You have to choose what you want to automate. With a Pro Tools plugin, with a native plugin that comes with it, it's actually quite easy. You can use the claw to choose that. But if you don't have it, you have to open up this list here. So let's say if I wanted to automate my feedback on my left side, I double click it and it puts it over here, over here. And if I wanted to automate my feedback on the right side, I have to put that as well. And now, see how they have a green circle around them? That means that it's automatable. Sometimes it'll have a green box, a green circle, a green dot, something like that. And that means that the automation is turned on, so I can actually automate it now. If I don't want to automate something, if I've done some automation and I want to make sure I don't change any automation, I can hit the safe button. It'll stop. It'll like lock the automation in. If I want to automate something and it's a Pro Tools plugin, I can hold down my claw, Control, Option, and Command. Hold that down and click it, and it pulls up a dialog that says Enable Automation for Delay Right, and I can click that, and it automatically selects that for automation. We do not have to open this box, but that only works for Pro Tools plugins, okay? Cool, right? So that makes life a bit easier for people. Now, here's a cool secret. I don't know if it's a secret, but I don't know a lot of people who know it, but if I want to automate everything at once in a Pro Tools plugin, I hold down Control, Option, Command, the claw, and I click it, and now everything becomes automatable, just like Logic or Ableton Live or something. And I can disable that as well if I haven't done any automation. So that's a really cool thing to keep in mind there. And the notes basically just say this. When you auto-enable a parameter, a green dot or box appears in the plugin, or a circle apparently now. That's a new thing. This only works for Pro Tools plugins and a few third-party plugins. Some of the third-party plugins do it. And here's the claw, Control, Option, Command. Claw click on a parameter to quickly enable it. Claw click the auto enable button to enable or disable all parameters simultaneously. And here's some shortcuts for your Pro Tools plugins. Check this out. If I wanted to turn off my reverb, if I want to bypass it real quick, I hold down Command and I click it and it turns blue. See? It turns blue. Blue, 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 blue. Okay? If I want to disable the plugin entirely, I hold down Command and Control, and I click it, and now it turns gray. It grays out and italic. Now, people ask me, why would you do one and not the other? And the answer is, nowadays, I don't know. The Lexicon plugin, actually, the reason why you would do it is probably because it will actually release all the DSP from my UAD. It's a UAD plugin, so it's taking up DSP. So if I click it, whoops, like this, turns it on. Oh, you can actually hear a little bit of noise in there too when it comes on. That's interesting. If I hit the bypass button, it doesn't release the DSP here. It mutes it so I don't hear that noise anymore. Do y'all hear that? I hadn't even noticed that before. That's going to annoy me. So the lexicon plugin here, if I bypass it, it still has the DSP. But if I disable it, then it doesn't have the DSP. Disable one more time is control and command together. And bypass is just control. Okay, so now what this does is it both just basically mutes the plugin. It's a little bit too... Here. There we go. I like that one a bit more. Cool. And so there you go, some shortcuts. Oh, and if you want to copy the plugin over to another track, you just hold down Option and click it and drag it. But remember, multi-channel plugins cannot be copied onto a mono track. So for example, this Distortion PSA1 is a multi-channel plugin. If I try to drag it over here, see, there's a red box and it says, this plugin cannot be copied there because the plugin's number of input channels does not match. Pro Tools is not a happy camper. All right. And then we have Audio Suite plugins. Remember, these are the plugins that were non-real-time. So these only work on clips. So let's go in here. Turn my drums back on like this. So now I'm going to go ahead and loop this here. And Audio Suite is up here in the top, in the top menu, Audio Suite plugins. Now the cool thing about Audio Suite plugins is pretty much every plugin that you can use can be an Audio Suite plugin. Every plugin that they make for Pro Tools almost becomes an Audio Suite plugin. The synthesizers don't, and some others like Melodyne and stuff like that. But for the most part, they all become Audio Suite plugins. So if I wanted to use, for example, let's use Decapitator. And now it opens up and it looks exactly the same, but I have down here in the bottom, I have a preview button. And I can just flip through. And we can check out different ones. Now, this render over here on the right-hand side, when I click this button, it's going to apply this plugin to the clip, or clips, because they're all selected here. This 2 is how many seconds on either side of my selection. See, my selection is only this long right here. And the 2, what it'll do is it'll apply the same plugin to 2 seconds over here and 2 seconds over here. That way, if I want to do any crossfading or anything like that, I can apply it there. So I hit render. And now it's going through and it's applying this plugin to all my clips. And now, listen to what happens. You can see it changed everything. Whoa, sorry. That's annoying. Sorry about that. Let me undo that. And this is why I don't use Audio Suite plugins very much. Well, there's a couple reasons. One is stuff like that. And then 2, you can only do one plugin at a time. So I don't really use them very much. But that's Audio Suite's plugin. So here it is listed out here in the notes, in case you want to read it again, because I don't really want to talk about it much anymore. I want to move on to the next thing. Select the clip that you want to apply the effect to. Select AS effect that you want. Select the AS effect, Audio Suite effect you want to use from the drop-down menu. Play the preview, it's on the left, as you make changes to the settings, and then render the audio. You should probably create a duplicate playlist before you do all of this so you can apply it to stuff and then change it if you want. A couple of useful Audio Suite plugins. The main one that you're going to use Audio Suite for is this reverse right here. It's only available as an Audio Suite plugin. The way that you reverse sounds in Pro Tools is you use the Audio Suite. So I go up here to Audio Suite, I go to Other, and I go to Reverse. Now if I want to reverse that, I hit render. Here we go. And now, right, cool. I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna make a new playlist actually first before I do it. Duplicate, boom, and now I'm gonna apply it. So there we go, and that's how you would use an Audio Suite plugin. The only one I use it on is reverse. Cool. The reason why I made a separate playlist for that was because now if I don't like it, I can always go back to my other one. Right? I can say, that's pretty cool, but yeah, the reverse is pretty cool, but not what I wanted exactly. Whoops, let's do this. Go over here, and let's do it to this last hit like that. And we're gonna, where is it? Oh, I closed it down. Reverse and render. Cool. And then Andre says, so when editing groups, should you wait until you get near the end of your mix to make these edits and edit each channel individually first? You mean like if I want to do reverse stuff? It depends on what's in your head. I mean, if you want to reverse everything, then yes. But if you just want to reverse the snare drum, then no. I mean, I do a lot of my reverse snare drums early on because I'm like, if I want that shut, shut, shut type of sound, then I know I want that sound. So I'm going to go ahead and do that early on. But if I want the whole thing to be reversed, then I would wait until later. And then Gio says, how long does Avid take to verify your address? Because it won't let me download Pro Tools. I don't know. I'm sorry. I do not know the answer to that question. I've never had to have Avid verify my address. And I mean, you should have gotten the email yesterday with the download stuff. So I don't know. So let's listen to this. Cool. All right. There we go. So that's what's up with that. Okay. We're going to come back and talk about that because that's not a question that I can answer right now, and I don't want to get sidetracked too much. But let's remind me to talk about that. Let's see if we can't get to the bottom of that because I can find out what email you gave him. I don't know because you gave it to not me, your teacher before me. All right. So this is the end of the lesson here. These other ones here, gain is not something I really use much anymore. Just use clip gain instead of Audio Suite gain. Signal generator is to create steady tones. There's some cool stuff you can do with that. We might have time to talk about it at some point. Sorry, my glasses are just giving me a headache here. Sorry, it's like my glasses are getting pinched by my headphones. I've had them on for too many hours. All right. The normalize. Don't use normalize. I know people talk about normalize, and you've probably had friends tell you to use normalize, and you've probably talked to people who are like, yeah, normalize. Don't use normalize. Normalize is stupid. It's horrible. It's ridiculous. Don't use it. Normalize is what it does. It analyzes the audio and finds that the loudest peak is at -5 dB or whatever it is, and then it turns up the entire audio file by 5 dB to bring the loudest peak to 0. So that one peak will reach 0. This does not make things louder necessarily. It depends on whatever your loudest peak is, and it turns it up by that much. So if your loudest peak happens to be -2 dB, it's only going to turn things up by -2 dB. If you want everything to be louder overall, then you need to learn how to use compressors and limiters and stuff like that correctly. And it took me for a long time to understand normalize. I didn't understand it. I didn't know that this is what it did, or I didn't understand why this would be good or bad. But it's bad. Now, if you're doing drum samples, if you are sampling drum sounds and drum kits and you're making your own drum samples, then you should use normalize because drums always start hot, they start loud and get soft. And I'm not talking about drum loops, I'm talking about drum samples, like individual drum hits. They start loud and they get soft, and you can just make them nice and loud, and then you can adjust the volume levels in your drum kit program of choice. Later on, you can adjust the levels and stuff. That's what I like to do. I like to have my samples be nice and loud and then turn them down. But don't normalize other stuff. Meh. Okay, so we've finished today's lesson, but what I want to do is I just want to keep going here in Pro Tools. And I want to show you the mix part. We talked about this mix part here. So I'm going to go ahead and let's listen. Okay, so I'm going to use this section here for my and then this one here is a little bit off. We can see. Let's go ahead and fix that. I don't know why. How did we miss that before? Oh, also I'm going to go back to number 2 here. Yeah, and fix it in number 2. I'm really not sure how we missed this one. Oh, gross. There we go. Pull that back. Cool. Oops. Just make sure it matches. Awesome. Okay. And this one's a little bit early over here. Oh yeah. What's going on there, buddy? Hey, how you doing? All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to keep that loop going and we're going to apply some effects in here. The first thing I'm going to do is this kick drum sounds fine. Whoops, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my drum group. And let's just listen to this here, and we're going to go in here. I'm going to use all plugins from Pro Tools right now. And let's listen. Right. Give it a little bit of thump there. And I'm going to find. What I'm doing is I can find the frequency. I want to get rid of that frequency right there a little bit. Get a little bit of coloration there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little saturation on it to kind of give a little bit of a feel to it. And I'm going to go down here to harmonic. And I'll use, since we're using the ones that come with Pro Tools, we'll use this Sans amp. And I'm going to to the low end here. Get a little something, something. Now, as I'm doing this, you can hear it's getting louder. I'm gonna have to turn it down in my mix. There we go. Cool. All right, just do that there, get that little something. Now let's go over here to our snare drum. The snare drum, again, we're gonna put some EQ on it right here. A little bit of that extra. You don't want too much, right? Especially in the beginning, your inclination is going to be to grab it and turn it up a lot because your ears aren't really developed yet. So you just want like a little bit. Let's hear. Just a tiny little bit right there, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the bleed. We're going to use the gate to do that. Okay. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and put another and I'm going to go ahead and mess with some of these levels here. Now really, what I wish there was a dry wet knob in here. And this is not a plugin that I would use in real life, actually. I would use a different plugin for this, actually, for both of these. This is too much, it sounds too much like an amplifier, and I don't really want this amplifier sound. Let me just show you. Let me just use this one here. Instead of using a plugin from there, let's use a plugin from what I would actually use in real life. And I'm going to use the oxide tape. And let's use that, because that's going to sound more like the... Turn it down. Oops. Yeah. Whoa, why is that so loud? And it's super soft, actually. I don't know why I don't know why I have to drive the input so much. These were recorded really quietly, but there we go. I like that. And this gate. Yeah. That one made that one nice and tight there. Do you have to download the HD driver along with Pro Tools, or? I don't think so. I don't think you have to download the HD driver at all. All right. The hats. Let's go for the hats here. Let's get an EQ for the hats. Hats. And let's listen to them. Cool. Pop up that high frequency a little bit. Sweet. Sounds fine. Now we're getting most of the high frequencies from this one. So we'll go in here, and if you want to push those, see how crispy you can make those? It's like way too much. And depending on what kind of mix you want, you can make those more or less. Take out some of that room around 110 here. Adjust my Q to make it a little bit less. Let's listen to this with everything else so we can hear what it sounds like correctly. Awesome. I'm going to bring my hi-hat over to the left side a little bit more. Cool. Now, these tom drums here, let's get a little bit of something on these as well. I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and put these into a subgroup. I'm going to make a subgroup out of these so I can put the same effect on all three of them at the same time. So I select them all here, and I'm going to go to my output. I'm going to highlight this and hold down Option and Shift and go to new track. I'm going to call this a tom group. There we go. I put it kind of in the middle there, so I'm going to move it over to here. And I'm going to make it this kind of orangey. Let's color it up correctly. There you go. let's make it this kind of color here so I know it's a aux. And these are going to go here to the tom group. There we go. Good. And on this tom group, I'm going to use another harmonic plugin. And let's use Decapitator a little bit here. And again, I know you don't have Decapitator, but if you want to know what the secret sauce is, this is the secret sauce. Let's get a room driver here. Turn it down. Yeah. Yeah, cool. And I'm just going to loop that one bar right there, so I can hear, right? I kind of like that one. That sounds good. You can hear it brings out those toms nice. And I mean, like, there are some plugins that are just the secret weapons of people, and Decapitator is one of them. A lot of people, like, I use Decapitator on so many things, on my bass lines, on my drums, all these things, because it just adds a nice feel to stuff. I really, really, really recommend using Decapitator on everything. Now, because I made this new track here, I need to actually pull this into everything else. So it has to go into my drum group. And then also, these here, I wanted to go to my reverb. Well, they're getting reverb from here. Let's see, but let's go ahead and see what happens when we do this. And let's send this over to my distortion as well. How much are these going over to the distortion? I'm going to mute. I'm going to bypass these as well. I'm going to see. Okay, they were going full throttle there. Cool. There we go. Sweet. Yep. Nice. Yeah, cool. So that'll make those toms pop out a little bit more. Now you see what I did. I actually added just a group in here, and I ran all the toms through this group. And we're going to come back and we're going to talk in detail about subgroup mixing and why I'm doing this kind of stuff. We don't have time to talk about it today, but we will definitely come back and talk about it here. Let me go ahead and save as, because I haven't saved as. Let's call this one audio, Elastic Audio Mix. Oop, there we go. Cool. And we got this stuff here, the drum group. I'm going to put a little compression on my drum group. And the compressor I'm going to use is the one that it does come with Pro Tools, the BF76 here. I'm not a huge fan of this particular BF76. I don't think it's a very good emulation. It's a very old one, and it came with Pro Tools. I've been using it forever and ever, but it's better than nothing. Cool. Awesome. I just turned the reverb down a little bit, so. Okay, cool. And that's how we would do like a mix on this. And you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 plugins going on in here. So that would satisfy everything. It's, well, I guess I got some of these here, but you could put some more on just to satisfy the needs. Like these tom drums could have like EQs and stuff on them as well. And that would satisfy the needs of the today's lesson. But it's just right over here. And there it is, 10 insert effects, 2 sends, and reverb and delay. And then submit a screenshot. So I would just take this that I've done and Command-Shift-4, and just submit a screenshot, boop, of that. And there you go. And that would be okay. I would be okay with this. You'd probably want to include the kick drum in there as well, but cool. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording right now and go.